In the last video series you saw, we were working on that stream bank project. That was probably one of the biggest construction projects that I've ever done in my life, to be honest. Over 100 semi-loads of rock came in here, excavators, Ben's crew did a great job, Shay and Mary and everybody and Beth, all of us worked together to be able to get this project done here, and I'll tell you what, I am so happy with the way it came out. We're finally starting to get some rains now, so the stuff that we've planted along the edges are starting to come in, and it's really starting to hold everything together. I've got a couple cameras on some of those crossings that we put, so I'll put a few videos up at the end of this video of what deer have been crossing the stream bank spots that we created for them. If you haven't had a chance to catch up on the other videos, make sure you do that, because we did a big clear cut project, which is over my left shoulder here. That's really starting to thicken up good. Last time I drove by with my tractor, I busted a few deer out of it, so that was exciting to see. And before that, I gave you an update on a couple of the different kill plots on the property that are really starting to thicken up now. We went in there with the Fecon mulching head, we opened them up, we gave these deer different varieties of food to be able to eat, changed their habitat up, and man, oh man, do they gravitate to those spots quickly. But today, we're here to talk about tree and shrub plantings. I'm going to show you some of the things that we've done here to be able to get the optimal success out of these trees, to be able to make sure that they're going to have their best chances of becoming a forest. Every time Kurt and I film, the sun, I feel like, is just beaming on us. But here we are. We are standing on this 1.8 acre tree planting. Now remember, this big bottom here had no cover in it. It was all being farmed. We came in here, we put this, basically this master plan together, and with the way this creek makes this bend right here, I wanted to have a forest here. It's just gonna make a great bedding area. These deer are gonna be able to basically hang out here all day, sit in the sun, have good cover, of course, in years to come, and then the food plots aren't gonna be too far from here. So this is just gonna be a great spot to be able to sneak into and be able to hunt without always disturbing the deer. This is 1.8 acres. This is a hardwoods planting. So I'm gonna show you some of the things that we're doing to maintain this planting so we can optimize the success of these trees in the future. Now we're walking in the sun. So the first thing that we did is the forester came in with his crew, and we ended up planting these trees wide enough apart so we can get the mowers in between each one of the rows. That's critical for maintaining these trees, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can get in here, check on them, clean out any weeds that get around them over time. But in the early stages, you really do want this growth that you see behind me. This particular tree is caged, but this growth here ultimately camouflages the trees. If I get in here and I start looking around, I'll be able to find a tree here pretty quickly within this row. But the key is you just don't want it to be so mowed and so open that the deer can just be like tree, tree, because they will just devour them. It is impossible to be able to cage every single tree or to be able to put a tube around, which we'll show you by Tree Pros. But you want to do the best that you can to ensure that from a percentage perspective that at least 60-70% of these trees are going to make it to maturity, which is ultimately, for me, I think would be a huge success. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these trees. So this is an example that we've talked about. If you've watched the show enough, you see us doing the caging of the trees. This is taking a rebar stake, a heavy cage. We go ahead and we roll it out, make the cages, and we basically pound these stakes into the ground. And when you do this here, I can assure you that this tree here's success rate is gonna go up by tenfold. You come on down here, of course you're always gonna have weeds in the tree cage, but the bottom line is when you get down in here and you look for the tree, there's this beautiful oak right here, and he's completely protected by this cage. But this oak is absolutely perfect, and the deer are not gonna knock this cage over. So when you can cage them, if you're not doing as big of a project, maybe you're just putting in 3 or 4 oaks, maybe you're trying to recreate a little savanna in an area that you're opening up, take the time and get the heavier cage, couple of metal stakes. What a lot of guys are starting to do now too is, instead of using metal stakes, and I'm going to try this in my next go around, is you can get fiberglass stakes, and they're significantly cheaper. I usually buy these in 20-foot lengths, and then we cut them down to 5-foot heights, and that usually works out perfect for these. So consider looking at the fiberglass stakes, because I think you're gonna be able to save almost $4 or $5 a stick. So that's gonna make a big difference. So if you keep coming down here, again, the trees are planted in the row. Now we've just reached an area here where you know, there's no cage. So here's the tree. Now we've been in this terrible drought. Now look at this tree here. Unfortunately, this tree died, but what you can see happening on this particular tree is it's trying to re-put on growth. The drought has been so bad here this year that I've tried all different crazy ways of getting in here and watering these trees. I mean, I bought a trash pump. I tried sticking it into the creek. I went ahead and tried to do that, and boy, oh boy, I tell you what, it is a lot of work. When those hoses get going, I give a shout out to any fireman that's out there, because these skinny arms are not gonna work for being a fireman. I tried hanging onto that 2-inch trash hose for about 2-3 hours one day trying to water all these trees, and it was a nightmare. So in this particular case here, it's not that this tree has failed. It's gonna put on that second chance here. It's really pushing hard. So in a situation like this here, what you wanna do is you basically just take your knife and you wanna kind of get a new leader going. So I'm just gonna come down here and I'm just gonna cut my finger off, get that off of there, and now this guy here will get going again. He's putting on some new leaf growth, and hopefully, they'll usually do that like once or twice, and then after that they just give up because they can't support the root system, you know, through the leaves. So hopefully this guy here is gonna make it. Now, this was not because of browse pressure. This here was just a situation where this tree here just didn't have enough moisture and died. The one that you saw in the cage, which literally is 3 or 4 feet away, is doing fantastic. Obviously those roots just got a little bit more water, or was lucky enough to was reached by my hose, and I hit that one a little bit longer. So let's go ahead now and take a little bit further of a walk. This is another important thing you got to pay attention with tree plantings too. You know, here you are, you want to build a forest. I mean, I'm standing here, the foresters guys work so hard to get all these trees in here perfectly, and literally I'm standing here by Kurt, and I can see this beautiful oak in this cage next to me, the one here that obviously didn't get enough water, but then you got these freaking, you got a tree right here, of course the ones that we don't want. You literally have got 1, 2, 3 trees that have better growth than the oak trees that are already coming up. So I'm gonna have to really keep an eye on these guys here, because these are not the varieties that we want. These guys here I'm gonna end up cutting down, and I'll just have to come through here in time. I don't mind them right now, because again, if I'm creating some canopy, I'm creating some cover to kind of give the deer some other browse, reduce the pressure on the better trees, I'm totally fine with that. But eventually what's going to happen is these trees here, I don't know what these are, they're mulberries or
box elder.
Box elders, yeah, box elders are just they're vigorous growers. But again, it is a tree. It's not a horror. I mean, no, it's not an oak. It's not some of these nice hickories and things that I have down here, but they're going to grow 3, 4, 5, 6 times faster than these oaks here. But I'll let them get up. It allows those other trees to kind of grow with them. Come with a chainsaw and we'll just cut them and then give them a squirt. We'll be able to kill them. So let's keep moving along here. So absolutely want to keep these rows mowed. Been doing a lot of mowing. It just makes it so much easier to dive in here and work on the trees. But we're going to go ahead, and behind me here you can see, or in front of me here, you can see all the tubes. This is my first year doing the tubes. I've talked to a lot of different people who've had some good success with them. I'm just trying to do everything that I can. The problem with the caging is it does get very expensive. This is an alternative. I've had some people tell me that they've had great luck with it. I've heard other people that say it wasn't as good. I think the cool thing is, over time, you know, the technology is getting better. I think the plastics are getting better. And I mean, I'm literally just standing here, and I haven't been in this little plot here for a while, but I'm looking over my shoulder, and I mean, the growth that I can see inside that tube already looks pretty impressive. So let's go take a look at this tube. Well, this is one of the trees by that Tree Pros. I'm going to go ahead and take the tube off so you can see it. So in this case here, before I take the tube off, this is a 5-foot rebar. Again, I'm going to be switching to trying out the the fiberglass ones, because I think I could save some money and it will just help reduce the cost. But basically, you've got this great plastic tube, there's venting holes in it, the sunlight can still get in it, and it really just forces this tree to really want to grow up. And I mean, again, I haven't taken the tube off yet, but I'm pretty excited. You can see the growth of this tree is almost literally up to here. I mean, this is probably one of the highest trees around that I see versus the others. So there's no doubt it really promotes them to want to grow upwardly. Let's go ahead and pull this off. It comes with a couple of zip ties that you put on. It also comes with this little thing here. It looks kind of funny. People are like, what the, you put little hats on your tree cages. This is super important because what happens is baby birds will come in the land right here, and if a baby bird falls in there, it can't get out. So what this does here is this just protects any little birds from falling in the tube. Let's go ahead and pull this off. Hopefully I get this back on and take a look at this tree. So here we go. The tree looks good and healthy. Definitely coming up pretty good. It's gonna be hard to get that tube back on now that I did that, but the tree looks great. So very, very, very impressed with what I'm seeing so far. Now again, I just started with these tubes, but definitely is looking pretty good. I mean, there's no girdling down at the bottom because we make sure that we are getting this piece down in so so mice can't get underneath there and start chewing the bottoms of the trees. But so far, this guy here looks really, really, really good. Let me go ahead and just slide this back on. This isn't going to be very easy to do. I might have to come back and do this. Getting these tree plantings to go is not easy. It's super important that you maintain them. You can't just plant them and leave them. I realize that if you're planting big acres, I mean maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 acres, yeah, there's a point where it just comes down to odds. Here is one of the trees that is not tubed, is not caged, okay? So right off the bat, the first thing I'm seeing is browse pressure. You 100% can see that this little oak has been browsed, which again, there's nothing you can do. The deer are gonna find some of these trees. But this weed here, I call this weed here the UFC of weeds. I mean, this guy here has a choke out capacity of something like I've never seen before. It's a vine. It's called bindweed. This thing here is the nastiest vine that I've ever seen. You can just see there's a whole chunk of it right here. I mean, it's just a big vine, and as I yank it out here, it has been going around and around this little oak tree all the way up to the top. If you come back and not check these trees, I guarantee it next year this guy here would have been choked out. Now, those UFC fighters get people to choke out a lot quicker than that vine does, but I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how there are so many things that just want to kill your trees. So you got to make sure that when you plant a planting like this is 1.8 acres. I am purposely mowing it so I can come down here, take an hour one evening, take a stroll, pull some weeds out of the cages, look wherever those vines are, wrap it around the trees to be able to get them to be as healthy as I can. Again, you're going to have browse pressure. There's nothing you can do. That's why when you plant them, you keep the population up as high as you can. That way you're guaranteed to have some success rate. They're not going to get them all. The best tip that I can give you for also helping your tree plantings along and managing weeds is if you know you're going to do a tree planting, what you want to do the fall before the tree planting, you want to come in with a perennial rye and a timothy grass. I wish I actually did that in this plot here, but I made one little mistake that I won't make again, and I'm going to get to that in a second. First, what you want to do is, let's say you're going to have a tree planting. Let's just say it's going to be a 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre, it doesn't matter. You want to go in the fall, you want to kill it with Roundup, okay? Make sure it's stone dead, and you want to plant timothy, and you want to plant perennial rye. Get that stuff established. When you come back in the spring, that's going to be growing green, it's going to be looking good, and that's when you do your tree plantings. When your forester shows up to do the tree plantings, you go ahead and have them plant right into that timothy and that perennial rye. What you do not want to do at that point is do a herbicidal application along the tree rows. Because what ends up happening is, you'll see behind me, and we'll get to it in a minute, is it is so strong and it works well, and it does give those trees an immediate level of protection from the weeds. But what stinks is once that wears away, and it does, the number one thing that grows is what? weeds, 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 and I promise you it's always the weeds you don't want. It's the thistles, it's the cockleburs, it's all the nasty stuff, poison hemlock, all the things that you don't want in those cages, especially when you start reaching your arms in there and trying to pull all the stuff out. So when you put down that perennial rye and that timothy and it's growing, what happens is you go plant those trees right in there, it holds back all those weeds. It's a lot easier to mow. It still provides protection for the trees, and it's something that you can maintain, and that perennial rye will keep reseeding itself for multiple years, giving those trees a chance to really get high and to keep the weeds at bay. I promise you that is the best tip that I know when it comes to planting trees, and every future tree planting that I will do, I will execute that, because if not, you'll have nothing but a ton of weeds growing within your cages and in your plants. Again, if it's not the deer, if it's not the vines, then you got Japanese beetles. I mean, look at that. They absolutely just wore that sycamore leaf out. It's not easy being a tree. It's not easy being a big buck either. Oh, they're using it. There's definitely, this is that one spot where we came with the excavator and just made a nice, easy transition so that bank, so they could avoid the rocks, but yet still have a nice spot to come up. And sure enough, they're already starting to use it.